Shalom Aleichem Chevra. I apologize. It's going to be a bit of a short shir. I have to hop on a bus to Ramat Beit Shemesh to check a baby, to take off the bandage after the bris. It's a standard protocol to take off the bandage and Baruch Hashem. So Baruch Hashem, we're in the Tanya and we've entered a new section. We've been speaking about the anatomy of the soul, of Chochmah, Bina, Das, that essentially the higher parts of your soul are the intellectual powers that make up you, and that's why as a nation striving towards connection with Hashem and the Almighty, we understand the higher faculties of our mind and our brain is something that we put in very high regard, because that's where the interface is happening on the highest level, is in our minds. And we spoke about Chochmah, we spoke about Bina. Chochmah is the initial flash where you understand something, you realize something. We explained that Chochmah in a certain way is like getting out of the way, allowing a higher light to come into you. Then we explained Bina is the process of breaking that all down and developing it and making it more pronounced, profound, more details. If Chochmah is the idea of I want to build a house, so Bina is, okay, let's talk about the details. What is the trimming going to look like? And who are the contractors going to be? And where are we going to, and where's it going to happen? And what kind of soil is it? Is it a loamy, that's the word? A loamy soil? Is it going to be appropriate to build something on this land? And the Bina is all the details. But then you actually want to move that into more actualization and more emotion of when do I need to go forward with a certain decision? I should, yes, hire this person, he's reliable, he's good, or maybe no, I should refrain from dealing with this person, I should refrain from choosing that location, I should refrain from using this building material, because that's going to be bad at actualizing this vision. The actual moving forward in the vision or the refraining from something is the emotions. But how do you know whether to choose move forward or refrain? How do you know? What gives you that power to know and to discern and to deliberate between this is good or this is other than good? The answer is the third part of your mind called Das. Das. If you probably Wikipedia Das right now, that's probably the worst way to learn about Das. It would probably say something like knowledge. I would say that's like a 21% accurate English word. Das means the ability, and you'll tell me if this somehow relates to the word knowledge. I just get more confused when I use single English words to describe powers of the soul. Das, I'll just define it, and then we're going to go into the Tanya, how he describes it. Das is the spiritual power inside of your mind that allows you to take intellectual ideas, make them emotionally relevant, deeply connect to the intellectual conceptual idea to such a profound degree that you're so connected to it that you can't stop thinking about it, that you become emotionally charged up with it, and you know to either move forward in that idea or to refrain and take a step back. And Das will delineate exactly when and how much forward motion I should put into this idea, or how much refraining motion I should put into that idea. That's Das. So when you say knowledge, it's like, okay, it didn't seem to sum up exactly what Das is. Now you should know, it says that we went to Egypt, when we were in Mitzrayim, not only were we in Galus, it says that our Das was in Galus. Now, what does that mean that our Das was in Galus? It means that you could have a pharaoh that's running our life, and we're slaves, but we couldn't take something intellectual. We knew that God existed, and we knew, but we never integrated it into our heart to do anything about it. So we just stayed slaves. Kind of sounds like this world. Here's a classic example. I always use this example. If you ask a guy in shul, this is one of my favorite ones. So, Rabbi Yid, you believe in God? What's he going to say? Of course I do. What question is that? Of course I do. What do you think I'm doing here? And I say, well, do you believe that God does not want you to talk in shul? Of course he doesn't. And I'll quote you 50 Gemaras and 50 Zohars that say scary, spooky things about a guy who talks in shul. It really is actually scary and spooky. Do not talk in shul. So then he asked the guy, and I'll give you a shir klali with all the makoros, and I'll hand it out to you. Why shouldn't talk in shul? With the lumdis and the geshmak. So I say, so why are you still talking shul? Yeah. Why do you talk in shul still? I couldn't understand that. Was that gibberish? Yeah. You know what he's really saying? I'll tell you what he's saying. I have no das. I have no das. I know something intellectually, but it never impacted me emotionally. So I don't change. I don't change. Another classic example is, this is actually even more relevant, sadly enough, because it happens all the time, every day. You go to a shir, you're moved by the shir. You mamish, you're lit up by the shir. The second the Rebbe closes the sefer, everyone have a great day. What should ideally be happening if you have das? The Rebbe is walking out. What are you doing? You say, Rebbe, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And this? I can't. And you go down to the schnitzel. And what are you thinking about? You don't think about the schnitzel. What's schnitzel? What's a bagel? You can't think about schnitzel. What is this thing? I'm so involved in kal v'choimers of Yevama and chuppah and kesef. I get what's schnitzel? Who can think about schnitzel? Kesef acha kesef. Who can think about schnitzel? You're so in it. But what happens? The second Rebbe closes the day. What's for lunch? 1 second ago, you were so in the Taisus. You were lit up with the Taisus. And then what happened? Why aren't you like riveting and rushing with Tosfos energy? Why isn't it coursing through your veins? You can't stop thinking about it. What's the answer? The magical answer. There's no das. The das is still in Gullus. Now you know why we're still slaves to Pharaoh and Mitzrayim. Yes, Aaron.
Well, people really believe it, but when they want to do something, they kind of just like shut it off. Like, I'm gonna just, they know, but like when they want to do something bad, it's like kind of shut it on, like pretend it's not there. But they do know this. That's called
das is in Gullus. Das is in Gullus. They're not making it emotionally relevant to them.
Like,
you don't change from ideas. Ideas do not change you. Emotions change you.
It's like people who smoke cigarettes, right? They know it's killing them. But like,
excellent. So why do they do it? Besides the nicotine thing.
They're too addicted.
Because they never got emotionally charged up. I need to change. There's no das.
Even if they get our hands sliced off somehow, because they're still gonna be like, I still need it.
Because there's no das. This is all the same thing. There's no das. There's no das. Das, interestingly, in Kabbalah is connected to the throat, which, as you see, is the separating point. Is that this area has to be open. When they asked the Kotzker Rebbe, we hear that you're very smart. Why don't you tell us how far is the farthest distance in the world? And he said, from heaven to earth. And they said, well, how far is that? He said, it's 1 amma. It's 1 arm's length. He said, yeah. Here's 1 arm's length from the head to the heart. Is the farthest distance. To bridge the head and the heart is the farthest distance in the world, because that's called das. That's called das. To focus so profoundly on something, I can't get it out of me. I'm lit up with this thing. Das means to connect so deeply to something that I start living it. I'm lit up with it. I'm mamish lit up with it. That's das.
Even if you are lit up, like human people forget stuff slowly over time. Like it's just human nature.
You have to keep your das on fire. That's why the biggest things that we are all about is das. Das, which is going to be interesting. We're going to have to see. So why on Purim are we getting to a place of Adaloyada? Isn't that our whole thing is das? The way we're setting it up, Das is like, if you don't have Das, you're nobody. Das is like our saving grace. It's connecting the head to the heart. I'll tell you that's why some of the Chassidim don't wear ties. We don't want to strangle the Das. We want to keep it, keep it flowing, keep it open. Das is our whole thing. We're all about Das. We love Das. Das Torah. When you have a question, you need to go to a Das Torah. Das Torah means that they're connecting you to the Torah. Ideally, and that there's one from the head to the heart. So why here do we have this interesting mitzvah of Purim? We're like out of Das. We're going to explain this more on Wednesday. I'm just going to read 2 words from the Tanya. V'hadasu miloshen ha'odam yada eschava. And it says, interestingly, in the beginning of the Torah, the first 2 places it talks about Das, you know what it is? Eitz HaDas. Which is interesting. We think it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, Das means deep connection. It's not the tree of knowledge, it's the tree of deep connecting to good and evil, which means it becomes confusing. I'm so connected to both of them. I can't mix up. I'm so fused into this world of good and evil. Which I'm hinting already to the answer is that when you get above Das, that it's no longer good and evil. It's only good. And then we talk about Adam knew Chava. Now, here's a great example of knowledge. Das is not a good definition. Because he didn't know her like, it's nice to be your husband. And then he knew her, they were intimate together. And there's no greater connection than a husband and wife being intimate together. That's what it means. Literally fusing two, becoming one in that act. That's what's happening. That's the idea that your mind and your heart become so dast that they literally are ki'ilu having relations together. They're totally integrated. Your intellect and your heart are so integrated like physical intimacy. It's that profound of a connection. Das has to be so powerful. The lashon is kashrus v'schadrus, that you're connected. Shemekasher daita bekesher amitz v'chazak me'oid, that your das becomes deeply, profoundly connected. The yitka, and you literally, like yitka is like you shtup in, like putting in a peg. It's hinting. Machshavta b'chayzik, that you literally connect yourself so powerfully to Hashem and into the emotions. Das is going to be the secret weapon of the soul, of taking all the theoretical ideas and making it emotionally relevant. That's how you change. So we're still a little bit, we only answered 10% of why on Purim we get to a place of Adalo Yada, but we really need much more investigation in this. Mitzvah Shem will have Tanya tomorrow, B'siyat Dishmai, and then on Wednesday we'll have our shir of how to get drunk properly on Purim and what it really means to go Adalo Yada. We should be Zoich. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Yeshua Kaya. Call through.